The mystical American Patriots Society is transmitting to you from beneath 4 million cubic feet of solid granite, in the burning heart of the Yellowstone caldera. This is a variety program for normal sandwich-eating Americans with some concerns about living in a deranged, post-Christian technocracy. So, keep your third eye on the sky and your ear to the ground, as Sumo and Smokestack connect your main brain vein to a higher plane. Are you ready? Stand by.
Well, I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass. Pretty clear, I ain't no size two, but I can shake it, like I'm supposed to do. I got that boom boom, all the bullshit. I got all the right junk in all the right places. I see them magazines, they're working at Photoshop. We know them they real. Come on, make it stop. You got that booty, just raise them up, cause every inch of you is perfect from the bottom to the top. Yeah, my mama, she told me don't worry about the size. She said them boys like a little more booty to hold the nine. You know I won't be no stick figure silicone Bobby doll. So if that's what you're into, then baby just move along. Cause I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass. I'm bringing booty back. Go tell them skinning with the hay. You know I think you're fake, but every inch of you is perfect from the bottom to the top. Yeah, my mama, she told me don't worry about the size. She said them boys like a little more booty all night. Yeah, I won't be no stick figure silicone Bobby doll. So if that's what you're into, then baby just move along. Cause I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass, no trouble. I'm all about that bass. Hello, everybody. How's everyone tonight?
I don't know why. I don't know why that was so funny to me, but I'm dying over here.
That was a shout out. That was a song, a tribute to my friend who I found out recently listens to the show.
Oh, no kidding.
It's a tribute to him, and also because tonight we're going to talk a lot about animal sex.
But
also to him.
Does your friend have a nickname?
No. We'll call him the Greek. Let's call him Gorba the Greek.
Gorba.
For he is
cool. Hey, Gorba.
A man of great power and great sexual power. He knows who he is, and he is fantastic. He has fantastic taste in shoes.
Yeah.
I very much enjoy his company. A lot of times we used to in the past go to a Christmas cabin together every Christmas and have a Christmas dinner.
Excellent.
He's an excellent conversationalist. I believe the song fits in because he would be what the kids today describe as thick.
Mm-hmm.
He's a
like with two C's.
Yeah, with two C's. He's a thick booty man.
Mm-hmm. I can relate to that.
But he's a very very enjoyable person. I thought that would be a show. I got that song because we were going to talk about animal sex, but then I realized he listened to the show. Mm-hmm. I thought he is also an appreciator.
Mm-hmm.
An appreciator. And So that is for Gorba. Gorba the Greek, who's man of great power.
Yeah, that's a great shout out right there. You got a whole song.
Yeah, much respect. No, he really does have the best taste in shoes I've ever seen.
Cool.
I mean, I like footwear as well, but I have I like to go for alternative footwear, whereas he goes for footwear that makes a statement. Like my footwear is like, how can I get as close to not wearing shoes as possible?
Sure.
And his is, how can I have as much shoe as possible, right? And they're like, they can be diamond encrusted maybe. They're just great. I always think about it. When I think about them, I think, shoes. Also, you know what else? He has a killer facial shape. His jawline.
Yeah.
Perfect. It's true. It really is. But anyway.
Sounds like a cool guy.
Yeah, he is. He's a good guy. And I was just going to shout out to him with that song. But yeah, what today is the show topic is, of course, everyone's favorite, animal sexual relations.
I did not expect that.
Everyone was dying for that.
Mm-hmm.
They were all saying,
the time has come.
Well, people appreciated the Pygmy Show.
Mm-hmm.
In part, I think, because they learned a little bit about birds.
Yeah.
They learned how to tell a crane from a heron and a stork.
Mm-hmm.
And that's there's really no hobby that's more enjoyable than learning about the natural world.
People like the nature.
Think about this. Isn't this a travesty? You go through like 12 years of school and you can't name a single bird outside.
It is a travesty, yeah.
Or which trees are which. There ought to be like 4 years of primary school devoted to just walking outside and being like, there's an aspen, there's a hickory, there's a ground squirrel, there's an eastern gray, there's a fox, there's the Arctic version of the fox if you happen to be in the north, right?
Hey, let me just brag on my son for a minute. My 8-year-old son can walk you through the woods and tell you what all the plants are.
Oh, so useful, A.
Yep.
It also helps you enjoy nature more. Like people go on hikes, but everything's just a sea of green or brown if you're in the desert or wherever you may be.
But if you know what the plants are and what they're for, it's like a whole nother dimension of enjoyment.
It's a whole nother dimension.
Yeah.
It's like learning the constellations and looking up at the sky at night. Like if you know the zodiac and stuff.
Yeah.
It just totally opens up a new world. And so I thought, well, if people knew about that, they might want to hear about raccoons badgering foxes.
Oh, this sounds great.
And other such things that have occurred. And I want to open with a little story. This is an account by the Roman author Aelian. And I know it sounds like alien, but what are you going to do?
Yeah.
He lived 175 to 235 AD, and he wrote a book called De Nature Animalium. I cannot do that, and I'm sorry. My Latin is not.
It's okay.
Which means the animal natures, right? Quote, an Italian story which records an event that occurred when affairs were at the prime in the city of Cerberus has reached mine ears and is worth relating. A mere boy, a goat herd by occupation, whose name was Crathus, under an erotic impulse, lay with the prettiest of his goats.
Oh, no.
And this show is going to be ridiculous. And took pleasure in the union. And whenever he wanted sexual pleasure, he would go to her, and he kept her as his darling. Moreover, the amorous goat herd would bring his beloved one aforesaid such gifts as he could procure, offering her sometimes the loveliest twigs of the forest, and often bedweed and mastic to eat, so making her mouth fragrant for him should he want to kiss her. He even prepared for her, as for a bride, a leafy bed so luxurious and soft to sleep in. But the he-goat, the leader of the flock, did not observe these proceedings with indifference, but was filled with jealousy. For a time, however, he disassembled his anger and watched for the boy to be seated and asleep, and there he was. His face dropped towards his chest. So with all his force at his command, the he-goat dashed his head against him and smashed the forepart of his skull.
Oh, no.
The event reached the ears of the inhabitants, and it was no mean tomb that they erected for the boy, and they called their river the Crathus River after him. From this union with a she-goat, a baby was born with the legs of a goat and the face of a man. The story goes that he was deified and was worshipped as a god of the woods and vales. From the goat, we learn that animals have indeed their share of jealousy. That's the moral of the story.
Oh, mercy.
That goats. Let that story set the tone for this evening.
It's going to be a doozy.
We've got bestiality, we've got jealousy, we've got intrigue, we've got murder.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a Roman person talking about naming a river after a boy that married a goat. It's all there.
It's pretty wild.
And that just there you go. And then one more quote that I will then go into.
Okay.
You got to read old books because people think they're dry. They're insane. You read these old, and they'll be just talking and then there'll be these passages. Like one of my favorites, I forget which one. It may have been the History of the World, but I forget his name. One of these bishops in like the 800s, maybe, he wrote like the History of the World, and it starts with the first sentence is, "The Earth began on Tuesday at 3 o'clock on 6,400 BC in May." Or
yeah,
whatever.
man.
It's like, wow, that's extremely accurate. And then he goes on, he's telling all these, he tells about this king who got mad because they were crossing a river with his army, and the river flooded all of a sudden, and it swept like so many thousands of his men away, really hampering his plans for conquest.
Mm-hmm.
So he had his men give the river itself 10,000 lashes.
Oh.
And they just stood in the river and hit it with whips, as if this was doing something.
Yeah.
And this sort of stuff is not only hilarious, but it makes you think, oh, our leaders are sort of sane by contrast.
I'd pick that guy personally.
Me too, because at least he has a sense of humor about it.
Yeah, right.
You know? Like, what I would like to see is Chuck Schumer get up there and say, because of the lynchings that happened in the past, we must take vengeance on all the hickory trees. And he just goes and he leads a crusade to just chop them all down.
We're going to nuke Tulsa.
Yeah, we're going to nuke. We are going to nuke Tulsa to the ground right now. Because it is the ground itself which is stained.
Yep.
The blood cries out from the soil.
We're going to cleanse it.
It says, avenge Emmett Till, or whoever his name was. In the latest breaking Emmett Till news of 2021, we learn that his blood cries out for vengeance from the ground, a crime which cries unto heaven.
Yep.
And we must, therefore, spoil the... He has to go through and actually salt the earth.
We're going to salt the earth.
Grows there again. That would be great.
Yep. That'll fix it,
I would
finally.
get on board, really. I say, yeah, let's just go salt the ground.
Put all the cities to fire and salt the earth. Mm-hmm. And then we can be free.
I mean, at least it would be doing something.
That's true. It's better than just talking about it.
It could be a jobs program.
Yeah.
Like if we had
think of the economic boon to the salt industry, you know.
And we employed them to just go and destroy soil in racist places. I mean, what's the downside? There is no downside. You just go and you attack the actual ground. Like, what we need to have is we need to America itself, the continent. Mm-hmm. We need to scapegoat the sins onto the ground itself, onto the earth.
Yeah.
Takes care of multiple problems. One, it relieves the guilt of the people. Two, it helps us sort of offset the environmental craziness because now we're at war with the environment.
And it gives us something to do with all the nuclear energy waste.
Right. I mean, we're halfway there already. They're already talking about environmental racism. Just kill the planet.
Yeah.
It is racist. The planet itself is racist, and it must pay for its sins. I could get on board with that.
Okay, let's do it.
Anyway, to read old books. That's my pitch, to read old books.
That was a good one.
People in the past were really like that. Like, you know, Alexander the Great, when he was going through, he wanted to make one of the mountains near the Aegean Sea. His plan was to have people carve his face in it, like his torso, with like his hands in front of his chest, cupping a city.
Awesome.
And there would just be a city in his hands.
Like a literal full-size city with people living in it?
Yeah, like he's got the whole city in his hands, yeah. That's a guy with vision. He's got vision. Now, he's insane. In his hand. That would be great. Another great quote by French author Voltaire that relates to the show is he said, "I do not see why satyrs' existence should be impossible. Monsters brought forth from women are still said to exist in Bulgaria."
Wait, what?
Yeah, see. I changed the name. He said Calabria, but no one knows where that is. It's basically Eastern Europe, Bulgarian stuff.
Okay.
He said, "I do not see why satyrs' existence should be impossible. Monsters brought forth from women are still said to happen in Bulgaria." Which is true, if you've never known a Bulgarian woman. I have.
What do you mean by known?
Well, not in the biblical sense, just to meet them, be there.
I wonder if the audience can tell this is a nighttime show.
It is a nighttime. Pavlina! She's a monster. The monster, and she will pay for her sins. Here's the thing about Eastern European women.
Oh boy.
They are all gypsies, but they hate it. They do not like that you can say that you're a gypsy, because the gypsies are an actual ethnic minority there that they all hate.
Mm-hmm.
And they do everything in their power. It's like white people in America doing everything in their power to not be a redneck, and yet still, if you get like one Budweiser in them, they're just jumping in a river going, "Yeehaw!" You know.
This sounds like something Landshark or Hakan would say.
I know, it's right there on the edge. The Bulgarian woman, no matter what her is like, she is one magic crystal away from just being a babushka and putting a towel around her head and getting in a wagon. Every one of them. And I embrace that because it's a good look, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, could be worse.
Yeah, but anyway, Voltaire agreed that satyrs should. He was like, why not? Why not? You know. So today we're going to talk about a little book called "The Limits of Hybridization."
Awesome.
It's a challenging text written by an insane man who thinks that humans are the hybrids of pigs and chimpanzees. Who nonetheless has a legit PhD in genetics from legit universities.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing. This is like our Pygmy show, or the time when we talked about how Santa Claus was real and a fungus spirit.
Yeah.
Or that Bigfoot was a forest ghost. And every time people are like, they say, I started listening to the show and I thought, there's no way I'll get through. This is crazy. This is silly. And then inevitably they listen to it and they say, that was actually very interesting.
They always say that. Yeah.
And, you know, people said the same thing with the Minus World show. They're like, we're going to really talk about a glitch in Mario.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, we are. And it's going to be great. And what I have to say is ye of little faith, you know.
Mm-hmm.
People are so quick to dismiss. They're just so quick. And what I do, you know, I don't want to compare myself to Jesus. But I see where he's coming from. People are just so quick to, like, you heal people, you raise them from the dead, you give them free food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You sit down on a rock somewhere and you tell them that they have, and then one day you sit down on a rock and you say, listen, now you got to drink my blood. They just leave.
And they scram. Yeah, man.
Yeah. Where's the loyalty? And that's how I feel, because like we sit here, we help people with their relationship problems. We help them see through CIA deceptions.
Mm-hmm.
We help you not get caught up in a Capitol storming or race riots.
Yep.
And then you say, okay, but now I have to listen to a guy talk about crossbreeding reindeers and cows. You just leave.
Well, we get the audience we deserve.
We get the audience we deserve. And so but see, here's the thing. Every crazy person got there by a strand of logic that makes sense to a point, and they just fell off the edge.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you don't fall off the edge, this is what happened with this guy who's wrote this book, who's name is Dr. Gene McCarthy. How great is it that his name is Gene?
Yeah, that really works.
Like, it's great.
Yeah.
He was a man who he did his PhD dissertation and his early work, which was highly respected in academia, researching hybrid birds in the wild.
Rad.
Like robins that mixed up with blue jays and stuff, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And he found that they were surprisingly common. And I have seen them myself. Just a couple of months ago, I was at the park. You know, I'm a duck person.
I remember you mentioning this hybrid bird.
Yeah, I saw a hybrid Muscovy mallard. It was the only one. It was the first one I'd ever seen, and it was hideous. But he went through cataloging these things, and he discovered that in some cases, those hybrids would form their own little subspecies that would exist for a while, and who knows how long they've existed, and who knows how many breeds that currently exist are the result of that. Right? And he did some genetic analysis, and he thought, maybe quite a few. And so then he started seeing hybridization everywhere, and then he started seeing it everywhere, and then he started seeing it everywhere, and now his whole world revolves around it. But, and if you follow him until he falls off the cliff, he brings up some interesting points, which is why you listen to the crazy people. Because on this show, we do not deplatform, we replatform. We help those differently abled in worldview. You know?
What's that from Ghostbusters? We're ready to believe you.
That's right. We are ready to believe. Right? Like, if you happen to think the International Space Station is a hologram, and that 9/11 never happened, you're inshallah my brother. Welcome.
Yeah.
You know? So today we're gonna do the same. And we're going to re-platform the interesting, I do not say great, but the interesting work of Gene McCarthy, renegade geneticist. And we're going to learn about how chimpanzees bedded pigs and made you and me, and maybe also why centaurs could be real.
Well, before we get into that,
among other things, right?
Before we get into that, I want to tell you about my new project.
Oh, we have a new project together. We have so many things. Go ahead, yes.
Wait, before I get into my new project, I do want to shout out to our new friend and listener, Piemeister.
Hi, Piemeister. I don't know. Have I interacted with Piemeister?
I don't think so. But Piemeister says that he believes or agrees with about 70 to 75% of what we say.
Well, he's a smart man then.
I just want to say that those are rookie numbers, Piemeister. And we need to get those numbers down.
Get them down.
But anyway, we're glad we're glad you're Piemeister is some sort of like a theologian and holy man. And okay. So, there are limits to what he can agree with.
Of our show is like, hey, you want to be not normal in 2 years?
Yeah.
Keep listening. You want to be a weird shut-in? Would you? Yeah. Would you like to have a crazy wall with bullet points tied together by string?
Piemeister, for the sake of the kingdom, you need to consume our show in like circumscribed little safe doses, okay? Just don't go crazy. But we're glad you're here.
Yeah, well, I like to think... I'm torn because I do believe that the universe is fundamentally very strange and weird.
Well, evidently, yeah.
And that we only think it makes a lot of sense, and we have a handle. Look, this is Terence McKenna used to put it perfectly. He said, every civilization in history has thought they had the universe basically 95% figured out, with the extra 5% just a few years down the line in R&D.
Mm-hmm. And
they've all been wrong.
Yeah, indeed, they have.
Or at least have been able to be questioned. Why are we so sure that we have it down? You know?
Well, that's science for you,
That's science for you.
Also, today, I physically dominated one of our listeners.
Good. We need more of that.
Yeah. I'm not going to really elaborate much, but the domination was complete and fulsome.
What did you use to dominate him with?
Well, okay, I'll elaborate a little bit. It was a chairlifting competition.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's 10 years younger than me, too.
Chairlifting.
Yeah. It's like how many chairs in a stack can you lift?
Oh, okay.
That's like good. The stacking chairs at church.
Let me tell you something.
It was
you
awesome.
Want to physically dominate somebody. I recommend. This is not a weird BDSM thing. I guess it could be. If you're into that, this is my gift to you, I guess. Have you ever heard of a sambok?
The like the whipping stick for cows.
Yeah, the South American whipping stick.
Shajambok has a J in there somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a South American thing.
African.
It's like South African.
You whip cows with it.
Well, yeah, it was that. You whip cows, and also for hippopotamus ranchers and stuff.
Nobody ranches hippopotami. What are you talking about?
That's what I've been told. I don't know. This is what some Afrikaans guy was talking to me about. And he said, Afrikaans and Australians to me occupy the same space, but they just tell me stories and I go, oh, sure.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, the accent really.
I wrestled a crocodile last night with a dingo. I got my dingo 5000, and I just,
oh, man.
If they're like, well, I use it to whip my hippo, I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But Baz, you've actually been there.
I have been there.
But anyway, imagine a bullwhip mixed with a cane. A hybrid species, if you will.
It's a very whippy quarterstaff.
I have one.
Oh.
I have one, and it is fun.
You can put the hurt on somebody with that thing.
Oh, it's like hitting someone with a bat, but instead of breaking a bones, it just leaves a giant laceration.
Yeah, it like splits you open.
Yeah, it's nasty.
Yeah.
It's a nasty thing to have, but it's pretty fun. I got one just to whack stuff with, like watermelons and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of my favorite things to hit things with. But so that's my, if you want to physically dominate people, use the Sjambok, Sjambok.
You're like Mystical Gallagher.
That's right. Mystical Gallagher. Maybe go, I don't recommend whipping a hippo with it now that I think about it. That does, because hippos are very dangerous.
They will chew you up. Yeah.
But maybe.
Also, I want to shout out to Xenon and Whitebird. It's funny. I don't get into the alternate current radio Discord as much as I'd like, but Spore sometimes send me like little clips of nice things people say about our show, which is good because I get the nice things that people say and I don't get any of the negative things.
I don't think there are any negative things.
It really works out well that way. Right. But anyway, hey Xenon, hey Whitebird, glad y'all are listening and enjoying the show.
Yes. Namaste. Was that your other project? Was that your project?
No, I haven't even gotten my project yet. So
let's hear about your
right
project.
now I'm currently, this is a nighttime show, so I'm consuming my newest project as we record. It's my first batch of medieval ale made without hops.
Ooh, very nice.
So this is a sage ale.
And
it's pretty good, and it's kind of low gravity. It's malty. It's sort of a saison sort of a thing. So if any of our listeners are interested in brewing, I'm gonna as I'm working through my medieval brewing recipes, as I'm trying to perfect, I want to come up with 2 or 3 or 4 like really good non-hopped medieval style beer recipes. And so as I embark on this project,
gives you breasts,
right? Because hops is estrogenic and was put into beer as a mass population drugging experiment.
It really was. This goes back a long time.
Yeah, the Protestant Reformation wasn't 100% good. It was like 95% good. And the 5% that was bad was mainly drugging people with hops.
Governments have been doing mass population control measures through chemicals since the dawn of time.
Yeah. And hops is like a chemical weapon. So anyway, this first one, you have the sugar of it is from the malt. It's like sugar derived from barley. And then you need something bitter in there too to kind of balance the flavors out. And so before hops, all these other herbs were used. And so this one is mainly a sage ale, which is pretty good. And I've been enjoying it. So I'll post the recipe that I used up on the show notes, and as I do new batches, I'll just post those up. And if any of you have any suggestions or questions about like small scale medieval brewing, I'd be happy to answer them. But I will tell you, all the like sanitization and stuff is a load. You don't need to do any of that. I didn't
need to do any of it.
No, I didn't clean anything.
I know it's all just people being persnickety.
Yeah, it's just like there's just germs everywhere, and just let them eat the sugar and turn it into booze. What it is,
it's like when you start doing on an industrial scale, then if you do get a poison batch because you had some bloom of algae in there or something,
yeah,
and you poison 20,000 people that bought your product,
which won't even happen. You'll just have skunky beer, and you won't make money on it.
But if you did, people are worried about like you get salmonella in there or something. Yeah. So then it becomes like, oh, we got to sterilize, and then like small time brewers think, oh, then I must also do that. But your situation is not the same. You're not distributing to tens of thousands of people.
And really, if you just sanitize everything, you're sort of taking the magic out of it. So just like let everything be what it is.
Let everything be natural. Let it hang out.
Yeah. All
about that base.
Amen.
The other new project is. I have a pair of pliers. The other new project is we have I started, I don't know if it's going to go anywhere. I started a Gumroad podcast companion piece.
Yeah, man.
Called the St. Nicholas Project because he's my patron saint. And it's called the Nice List. If you get on it, you're the Nice List. Now, what is this? It's really just a way, if you want to help contribute to the podcast on a recurring basis financially, $7 a month. Because I make a lot of work for Smokestack sometimes. Like last week, I felt bad because I gave him, instead of one audio file, I gave him 4 with great pauses in the middle, or 3. And I said, here.
It's all good, buddy.
Put it together. Because I'm so disorganized sometimes, and I kept unplugging my mic while I was moving around. And then my program would be like, I can't find the microphone. I'm just going to stop recording. And then you plug it back in, and it makes a new file. And it's a whole thing. And sometimes, the research for the books I review costs some money, and the server. Just if it costs a little bit of money, this is going to remain a free show. But I didn't want to do like a Patreon or anything because I feel bad taking money and giving nothing. Mm-hmm. So I'm just recording little bitty, and maybe Smokestack will too.
I might throw in a few, yeah.
They're just little bitty podcasts that come irregularly. I hope maybe, 1 a week, maybe 2 a week. Of just my thoughts. I sit down, a little thought I have, not good enough for a full show. But it's just something, because that way I feel like, at least you got something, You get a little bit extra. But really it's just like throw in some money but I don't like feeling like I'm just like getting like you're just donating money. I like to exchange goods for services and money, right?
Really, Sumo needs a 5G hotspot so he can record from his travels all over the country.
Yeah, I need that too. So there's the Buy Me a Coffee, which still goes to the Billboard Fund.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's, if you want to actually like contribute to, and maybe if enough people sign on to it, the St. Nicholas Project will become like a bonus show. Maybe if enough people sign up for it, and it becomes like worthwhile to do that, which I hope to do one day, but so that'll be a link in the show. It's if you want to sign up, it's $7 a month, and you get what you get. I'm not promising you anything.
Keep your expectations low.
Right. It's not, again, it's really just a token thing because I didn't want to just accept donations because that feels a little bit weird.
Yeah.
But I'm not promising that you'll get in shape. I'm not offering you one-on-one coaching. I'm not giving you a program to grow your Twitter feed. It's just little bitty podcasts. Right? And so if you want to sign up for that, that's great. If you don't, it's all good. I understand, right?
How do the listeners find this thing?
There'll be a link on the show. I think if you look for Yoshi Matsumoto, which is Yoshi like the dragon from Mario, Matsumoto, Matsumoto, sumo's in the middle there, get it? Matsumoto, Yoshi Matsumoto. At gumroad.com, you should find it. It's the St. Nicholas Project. If you want to sign up for it, that'd be great, and it would help us out, help us do more things in the future.
Yeah, man.
But again, no hate if you don't.
Yeah, it's all good. We just love that you listen.
We like that you listen, and we hope that this helps people. But we'd also like to do more things in the future. So if you want that to happen, great. So that's that. And, oh, right. Before we get into, I had to look at a lot of web pages of like dogs having sex with chickens.
Is this a common occurrence?
No, just for the show.
Oh.
Because I was doing research. This is what my research looks like sometimes.
Sure.
But you know, dogs will have sex with anything.
For science.
For science,
yeah.
Right? For science. But before we get into that, I wanted to this came up into my, I knew about this, but I hadn't thought about it in a while. You know, with the 1619 Project and all that, trying to redefine history.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, you know, there are some legitimate redefinitions of history that maybe we could improve things. For instance, who do you think, Smokestack and listener, was the first European to the Americas?
Who do you want to answer first, the Smokestack or the listener?
Well, the listeners don't currently, we're not doing this live yet.
Well, I impersonate them.
Oh, that's true. Maybe one day, if enough people donate, we will do this live, because then we'll have, but you know, that'd be fun, wouldn't it? Anyway, go ahead. You answer first. Or you be the listener. You pick. You don't,
okay.
I'll try to determine.
I'll be the listeners.
Okay.
Christopher Columbus!
Wrong, you idiot listener!
They are dumb.
Dummies.
Yeah.
Our listeners are so sub-IQ. If you think it's Christopher Columbus, just go jump in a volcano. Okay. No, try again.
I think it was the Japanese.
No.
Oh. Okay, I'm
so.
also dumb.
I said first European.
Oh, sorry, I didn't catch that. First European? Okay, Vikings. Landing in Canada.
Better answer.
Yep.
Better answer. Leif Erikson did get here about...
He was a Viking, yeah.
500 years before.
I was going to say Leif Erikson.
About 500 years before the Columbus, he got into Canada. If that counts as America is debatable, but yeah.
It counts, yeah.
But however, I think there's a much earlier man that got here in the 500s.
Mm-hmm. In the 500s, you say?
In the 500s, I say. A Irish monk by the name of Saint Brendan.
You're kidding me.
Saint Brendan the Voyager. No, I do not kid. A lot of people don't know this. So, you know, there was these Irish monks at the time, or the Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a lot of peculiar habits, like going out and standing up to their nose in the middle of a river at midnight for hours, or living inside of beehives, stuff like that. And this was their spiritual practices, and which is these weird sort of monastic things have periodically throughout history spurned a resurgence in an interest in quote-unquote Celtic Christianity,
mm-hmm.
which doesn't really mean anything. Like Tolkien, this happened in Tolkien's time. People got into Celtic stuff, and Tolkien famously wrote, Celtic is a catch-all term that means everything and nothing. And that's true. Much like black today, or
mm-hmm.
white even. Like
mm-hmm.
everything is, it doesn't mean anything. I mean, the Celtic, I guess, traditionally means people of Irish, Scots, Welsh, or that one part in France. Britannia? Brittany,
yeah.
Yeah, that were, and I guess the Gaels, maybe, were a Celtic
mm-hmm.
language. Yeah, there we go. But that has been far left aside for like people that just want to use Celtic as like "Kiss Me, I'm Irish" or whatever.
Yeah.
And their name's Polanski or something, somehow, and like "Kiss Me, I'm Irish." But we just got through another round of that, of people being into Celtic Christianity, which died. I detected the peak of that in like 2012. And it sort of died away as people decided to shift their focus toward other weird ethnicities that no one actually uses anymore. But there was one of the other things that these weird Celtic Christians like to do was just go out into the ocean as a form of spiritual guidance.
Ooh,
like
cool.
Just go out into the ocean. I forget which one it was. I think his name was Saint...
like on a raft or what?
Saint Seamus O'Houlihan. Now, on a raft, on a boat, they would just go out and like sit. One guy, the guy whose name I'm trying to think of, would just wade out into the water like up to his head in the middle of the night and stand there all night. Because he wanted to like... If you've ever stood in the ocean, head high at your head in the middle of the night, it's terrifying.
I've done that. I found it kind of peaceful.
It can be. Were you with friends?
I was alone.
Oh, see, but you're very good at that. But it can be. I found it somewhat terrifying because you're in a.
I could see that too. Like depending on your frame of mind.
Yeah, you're in an infinite space.
Yeah,
there's
it's huge.
The sky above you. Everything's dark. No one's here. Right.
It'll just swallow you up.
And the sea could just literally swallow you at any minute. Correct. And he used to go do that because he felt like he wanted to get used to be close with death.
Cool. Yeah.
How people do. But anyway, they also had this strange belief in a place called, and I'm going to butcher this in Latin again. I'm sorry, Chungus. He's so good at Latin. Terra Repromissionis Sanctorum, which means the promised land of the saints.
Ooh.
Basically, they believed at the time, as was not uncommon, that the afterlife existed as a physical place on this physical planet. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And we spoke about that in an early show, how in medieval legends there was like purgatory was like inside of a literal cave, and you could go there and walk down, just like the Greeks with Hades. You know, you could go down.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought that this Terra place, Terra Sanctorum, was across the ocean. And Brendan was the abbot of a huge system of monasteries. He was all across Ireland and some in Scotland. And he was then like master abbot. And I think he had 3,000 monks or something. And he was talking with an abbot of another monastery chain named Barinth. Barinth was his name. And he said, listen, I have firsthand knowledge that this Terra place is real. Go there, there's no hunger, darkness, or thirst. The sun never sets. Right? And Brendan, who was in his mid-80s at the time, said, why, I didn't want to wait to die. Why don't I just sail to heaven?
Awesome.
So he got 13 monks to go along with this idea. They fasted for 40 days. They built a boat of wood draped in animal skin for and then they just sailed away into the ocean. And 7 years later, they came back. I mean, he was like 92 at the time when they got back. Which is why he is now the patron saint of elderly adventurers. Which is a great thing to be the patron saint of. If you're 85 and you say, I'm going to sail across the ocean in a handmade boat, that's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
So, but anyway, a lot of people thought, and there was this book written about him called the Navigatio, which is like the navigation or whatever. And it was wildly received for hundreds of years, and even influenced Christopher Columbus. He read it, and that made him think, he thought Brendan really did this. But he just took it to mean Brendan got to Asia.
Oh, okay.
That means the ocean's not as far as we thought. Our maps are a little off. I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
It is very conceivable that without Brendan, Columbus would have never made his voyage, because he was basing his thoughts on like Brendan really did this.
Wow. Okay.
I know. So, but for like a long time, people just said this is just a story because as is typical of medieval stuff at the time, it combines facts with a bunch of magical stuff. Like along the way, Brendan meets Judas on an island.
Whoa.
And it's Sunday, and so Judas is having his day off from hell, right? As you do. Which they thought made hell even worse because you got a break. And you're like, oh, good. But then the terror of having to go back.
Oh, man.
Right. I don't know if that makes it better or worse. That's up to interpretation. So he met Judas on a rock, and he talked with him in the story. They spent a full day on the back of a giant fish they mistook for an island. They came to a place where they saw birds singing psalms, and they celebrated Easter with the birds, stuff like that. It's a great story.
Yeah,
right?
rad.
But people thought, well, this is just a fable. However, he does give in this account, and he didn't write it himself, but people by oral tradition recounted what he said.
Mm-hmm.
Places that he encountered. And people are like, well, that's sort of interesting. But in World War II, there was a man, I forget his name, unfortunately, who was a pilot in the North Atlantic. And his task was to fly all around looking for U-boats, right? To see if he could spot them from the air and warn ships, He was familiar with the story of Brendan. Slowly, as he's flying around all the North Atlantic, he starts recognizing some of the places from this book. So there's a part in the book where Brendan says they come across, quote, a forest in the sea. Like some versions call it that, a forest in the sea. Mm-hmm. And the pilot recognizes that between Ireland and Iceland, there are these periodic blooms of massive amounts of sea kelp that just rise to the surface.
Oh, cool.
And he says, forest in the sea. But he doesn't think that much of it, right? And then the next day, but then he's flying, he comes up with the Faroe Islands, which is an island with such a long history of sheep and shepherds that it has its own breed of sheep, the Faroe sheep, you know? And then and Brandon says he came to an island of sheep. And he's flying over the Faroe Islands and he sees this island of sheep after he sees the kelp. And he's like, whatever. And then he remembers that Brendan says they came to a huge jeweled crystal temple. And it's like December at the time he's flying, and he comes and he flies over and he sees a big, big, like pyramidal iceberg.
Ooh.
He says, And then he remembers in the voyage, and he doesn't actually go there this time, the pilot. He says they came to an island of fire and smoke, and he looks it up, and sure enough, on Iceland in the same century that he was said to do this, there was an extremely active volcano.
Aha.
So this guy starts nodding. He's like, is this the path Brendan took? Like at least to Iceland. Iceland by way of the Faroe Islands. Mm-hmm. So this fellow did some more digging. He's trying to cross-reference all the places in the tale with like real locations. And he eventually came to the conclusion that Brendan sailed as far as the Bahamas. Which seems a little far-fetched, right?
Yeah.
However, there was a guy in 1976, Tom Severin, an author. He took two men with him, and using a replica Irish boat of that era, made of quilt and animal skins, and in 50 days, they were able to sail from Ireland to Newfoundland. So totally possible.
Wow.
It was possible that it could happen. But the nail in the coffin is, for me, is that all seems like, yeah, maybe. But Leif Erikson's colony in Vinland was once also thought to be just a story that the Vikings told. And they even had a map. The Vikings had a map from 1440, and Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, of the North American coast, which was, of course, dismissed as a forgery because of the Italians. Because Columbus Day was an identity politics holiday, too. It was. The Italians were like, we are Americans also, after they came over.
Yeah.
And they're like, we need to find a guy in history that was us. And Christopher Columbus, even though he wasn't Italian, he can be our guy. And even though he wasn't at all Italian. And, whatever. And so they were like, it's a forgery. We got here first. I mean, St. Patrick's Day was the same thing with the dumb Irish.
Yeah.
And I say this as someone that may be part Irish.
Sure. No, everybody's dumb. It's cool.
Everyone's a stupid head. And the Italians, the worst of all, because they're like, hey, Tony, our pizza's the best pizza.
Gabagool.
And Gabagool to Columbus Day, you forgery, Luke accidentally facts. Which is how all Italians are. Italians in America.
Yeah.
Italian Americans are a different species than Italians. Italians are attractive, smart, clean.
Yeah.
The only thing they share in common, really, with the American Italians is that they're both lazy. The only thing. Everything else is... Every Italian in New York thinks that they are part of the mob because one time their uncle's uncle maybe one time saw Al Capone or something.
Right, yeah.
And they're like, we're part of the mob. Anyway, that was why they dismissed it as a forgery. It was all politics, right? But the Viking map was real. But in the 1960s, they found the remains of a Norse village, again, in Newfoundland, right? And ironically, it is that same Viking lore, dismissed as fantasy, until proven true, that adds weight to the claims of St. Brendan. Because the Vikings knew the Irish in their lore as the only group of people that traveled further on the sea than they did. And they spoke of finding Irish missions on Iceland when they got there. In the 10th century, well after Brendan had showed them the way, presumably.
Yeah.
And in the Viking lore, when they got to North America, they recorded their stories of an encounter with a group of white Indians who wore long robes and carried staves and who spoke a language that, quote, sounded like Irish. Awesome. I know. And again, just stories. However, there was a guy, a Harvard marine biologist named Barry Fell, in 1983, who discovered petroglyphs in West Virginia. And they have been confirmed to be part of the Irish Ogham script. Whoop, whoop. The alphabet used in the 6th and 8th centuries, Brendan's time. And he translated them and found to his great shock that they were runes describing the nativity of Christ.
Oh, so awesome.
I know.
Yes.
People don't even know that. Now, people dispute the translation of the glyphs because there is a little bit like they're worn. It may be this letter. It may be that letter. Right? But they pretty much broad accept that these are probably that Irish script. Yeah. Right? So, in my book, pretty probable that this 85-year-old Irish monk looking for heaven on earth just sailed to America. And it will be... we are in sorry shape if West Virginia is where we go when we die. But otherwise, it's a very compelling story.
A lot of meth, you know.
If West Virginia is heaven, I mean, I'm sorry, John Denver.
The mountains are beautiful, but
almost heaven. Almost heaven. West Virginia. Maybe he knew about St. Brendan.
Maybe.
But it's not almost heaven. I mean, it's a beautiful state.
Maybe it's upside down West Virginia.
Oh, upside down. Maybe West Virginia is how you get to heaven. Like you have to go through a portal. Yeah. Could be. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out because these dumb identity holidays go on forever. One day, the Mexicans will get it together and say, today we celebrate Say La Bimba, or whatever. La Bamba. And he'll be some guy that someone just made up. Yeah. And
why not?
We'll have a holiday about him. Because like we always do.
Hey, before we get into the next segment, could you take a little break, maybe sing the audience a song while I step outside for a minute?
Are you going to go urinate?
I might.
Okay, I don't know what to sing.
Well, you've got a little time. I'll be right back.
All right, listeners. I'm going to sing you a folk song. It's a new folk song. I may have sang it before. A lot of people think this is an older song, but it's not. It was written in the 90s about the collapse of the cod industry in, again, Newfoundland. See how it all comes together? Out along the harbor reach, boats stand right up on the beach. Goes like in the early dawn. Empty now, the fish are gone. What will become of people now? Try to build a life somehow. Hard times are back again. No more fish, no fishermen. No more shoppers in the stores. Since the fish plant closed its doors, men who walked the trawler's decks now line up for welfare checks. There's big for sale signs everywhere. Pockets empty, cupboards bare. See it on the news at 10. No more fish, no fishermen. Are you back?
I'm back. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I was singing "No More Fish, No Fishermen."
It's a great shanty.
Great shanty. Okay, so now let's get into the meat. Okay, the work of Dr. Eugene McCarthy, who runs a website called macroevolution.net. Right? He's a man I consider. You can go visit it if you want to. It's a crazy website. He's a man, like I said, he's got a spark of genius. Fully trained in his field, a real expert, who just went too far. He went too far.
As happens.
He fell down a deep rabbit hole. And now he can only see the world through that lens and nothing else. Right? That's the trouble. But nonetheless, right? People that do such things, who become sort of monomaniacal about one hyper-specific issue, right? Through the very act of defending it and trying to reason their way out of their insane position and how it can be possible, they often dredge up very interesting data and ideas.
Yeah.
Right? Data that can alter how you yourself see the world without you having to also fall down the rabbit hole. And I think Dr. McCarthy is one of these cases. Up front, do I believe that we are a cross of human pigs humping monkeys? No.
It's good to clear that up.
Am I a proponent of ancient satyr theory? Not really.
Oh.
Right?
Disappointing.
Although you might be surprised to hear some of the names in history of people who were, like Voltaire. You know. So maybe just by listening, but by listening to his ideas without reflexively rejecting them, we might come to think some of the things that we thought were impossible, or maybe not impossible, but just improbable.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And maybe, given the direction of our society and science, maybe not so improbable either. Improbable.
That's a good word. I like it.
Improbable. Okay. So, I want to get some common misconceptions out of the way first. Because this was a thing I ran into back when I was online arguing that different races of people should more accurately be described as different species. This caused a lot of friction.
Yeah.
But see, people thought I was being racist, but really I was trying to talk to them about centaurs. This is
people
true.
Just don't understand, you know?
They don't understand, because I was trying to nail people down on like what species are, right? And like how it could, and people are just like, whatever, and then they get off, but I'm like, no, listen, just let me talk. I'm trying to, and then they get mad.
Yeah.
Because you suggested that maybe there are differences in people. But my point was they had a hang up on the idea of species. And I was trying, like, here's my point. Okay. Is the difference between a polar bear and a grizzly bear any more of a difference than, say, a Norwegian and a Korean person?
I don't know. Maybe.
I would argue not really, maybe a little less. Like, I
Okay.
don't know if you run the genes. Maybe a little more. I don't know. Right? And yet, we consider the grizzly bear and the polar bear separate species.
Mm-hmm. True.
And I would say, I mean, look, there are bears. Yes, can we all agree there are bears?
I agree.
We have to start from a point we all agree. There are bears. Axiom 2, there are different kinds of bears.
Yep.
Polar bears,
Yeah.
grizzly bears, black bears, panda bears, right? Some others as well. There's the sun bear, a personal favorite of mine.
They have a
Right.
long tongue.
Yeah, I use the sun bear in my books a lot, which are still not finished, but one day. There are bears. So you've got in nature a white bear, a brown bear, a black bear, and a panda bear. And of course, in human beings, in nature, you have white people, brown people, black people, and checkerboard colored people who eat bamboo, which is traditionally what we call Asians. Right? And yet, for some reason, I would argue largely political, ideological reason, not scientific. In the case of bears, we call those different species, and in the case of humanity, those differences are almost taboo to even acknowledge at a surface level, let alone call them different subspecies. Yeah. And the same as you have the same situation in wolves. We've got gray wolves, timber wolves, red wolves, coyotes. Some people argue they're a wolf, right? Same animal, same kind of animal, different subspecies, maybe different species, right? Depending on how you classify species.
Right.
For squirrels, there are in fact 289 species of squirrel on the planet.
That's a
lot
lot.
of squirrels.
Wow.
A lot
Yeah.
of people don't know about all the squirrels. You got the same with parrots, marmosets, monkeys, horses, octopi, caribou, geese, lizards, flies, cockroaches, cats, parakeets, right? In fact, if there is only one species of subspecies of human being, it would make us the only animal in the world for whom that was the case. Which is highly weird if, according to those same scientists who made up these classification systems, we are nothing different than regular animals. We're just another great ape out of Africa. And yet, there are different kinds of gorillas, there are different kinds of chimpanzees, different kinds of orangutans, but only one kind of... It's a bit weird. It's not exactly consistent, is it? Just my what I'm pointing out. Because the classification system we use on animals, we don't apply equally to humans because it's politically problematic to do so.
And taxonomy is sort of a pseudoscience anyway.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. But my point was, if you were consistent with how we applied it to bears and wolves, then human beings would also be separate subspecies. But they don't. They don't, right? And when you bring this up to people, the first thing they would do is chafe and get huffy. Because they don't like it when you challenge their worldview. And they would go, "Mah, mah, nah, mah, nah. But all the kinds of humans can breed together, and that means we're one species. Beep-a-dee-beep-a-dee-beep." Some would go so far as to say the ability to interbreed is the definition of what makes a species, right? And they'd say, angrily. To which I responded, usually by just sending them a picture of a Zorse. And then they would block me. And that was how I used to spend my days. Getting blocked for Zorse posting. Getting blocked for posting Zorses and Hebras.
Oh, man.
But see, that's the thing, is that Zorses are real.
They are real.
Right?
Yep.
No one argues that zebras and horses are the same species, right? But but you can cross them, and so what is that? If you can't use, my point in doing so was that just interbreeding was not sufficient for saying things are different species, and Darwin himself knew this. He said that when he looked at what people tried to classify as species, he thought it was a meaningless term. Because it had no strict definition that could be.
Right. And like, if there are people listening to the show right now that are upset about this conversation, it's because your ideas are based on arbitrary, like, made up definitions of things.
Yeah, it's because you've been mind controlled. Really, you've been brought up to think that some ideas should make you angry just just because.
Right. So just let go of that for a minute.
Yeah, let go of it.
Yeah.
Right? Zorses are real. So are Hebras and Zonies and Zonkies. And much like mules, which is a male donkey and a female horse. And contra common belief, it is not at all true that hybrids are sterile in general. Now, some are, but like coy wolves, by contrast, are very fecund.
Oh man, we're getting plenty of coy wolves out here in the east.
Coy wolves reproduce like rabbits.
Yeah, man.
Right? And though animals like zorses and mules have diminished fertility, not always, some can reproduce just fine. And sometimes their offspring can reproduce just fine. Like a mule or a Hebra has a lower chance, but not a zero chance of reproduction. That's the point. So, which is what we saw in the case with the Nephilim, didn't we? The word Nephilim, we learned, was also associated with the Hebrew word for abortion or stillbirth, because there's sometimes a problem when you cross. It doesn't always work. When you cross humans and angels, right? Or humans and Neanderthals, which again I would bring up, and I'd say we are a product, they claim, of hybridization, if you're not black. Everyone else is, Asians are part Denisovan, Europeans are part Neanderthal, and then black people are just regular Homo sapien, is what they say. Mm-hmm. And then somehow I would say, okay, but then wouldn't that necessarily mean we're different species if we're hybrids of different species? Like, that doesn't make sense. You're not being consistent. By the way, I can say this because my DNA test said I was like 0% Neanderthal, even though I'm white, so I'm really black.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm like the only white person that ever got like 0.0 Neanderthal. It was very close to that. I don't quite remember. I took the National Geographic one, and now I can't find my code to look it up again. Yeah. But it was basically like people would look at it and be like, "Is that right? You got 0 caveman?" Because they were like, we were sitting around and I remember them going, "Oh, I'm like the Geico commercial caveman." Because he had like a higher percentage, and the other person was like, "Me too." And I was like, "I'm no caveman." And they're like, "That's not right." I don't know how I did that because my ancestry is from Europe broadly. But maybe I'm like Noah. I'm perfect in my generations.
There you go. One can hope.
I'm the last white human. Really. Everyone else is tainted blood with Neanderthals. But I'm the last Aryan.
We need to clone you immediately.
We do. I trust that my wife, she was not DNA tested. I trust that she is also, by God's providence, pure Aryan.
Your children are glorious specimens.
We are the only, we're continuing the Aryan line from Japheth. That's what I believe.
Straight out of the ark, baby.
Straight out of the ark. It's true. But, okay, so, just as an aside, the fertility of hybrids follows a rule of thumb called Haldane's rule, which is basically that in hybrids of animals whose sex is determined by sex chromosomes, if one of the two sexes is absent, rare, or sterile, it will be the heterogomatic sex, which is a mouthful for saying that if hybrids tend to produce only one sex of offspring, or rarely just the other one, it will be the male that's rarely produced.
Okay.
So basically, male hybrids have a much higher chance of being sterile or not being born at all than female hybrids.
Got it.
So a female liger is a lot more likely than a male liger. That's not true all across the board, but that's just a general rule of thumb. Mm-hmm. Anyway, my point in all that, when I would argue with people and get banned for Zorse posting, was that it's very difficult to pin down what makes a species a species. Like, just because you can interbreed, it's not how it works. And the fact it doesn't work like that is problematic for a number of reasons. Not for like politically correct reasons either, although maybe. It's problematic because the mechanisms by which two separate species can blend and form a combo is not easily explainable by the standard model of science that we're all taught growing up. After all, like, genetics is super precise. If even one base pair is off, you can get all kinds of problems. You can get Tay-Sachs disease if you're a Jew. You can get sickle cell if you're black. You can, genetic abnormalities, just a bunch. You can be autistic if you're white, which is like everybody on the internet. You can get genetic abnormalities, illnesses, if like one little thing is off, right? And yet you take sperm from 2 different species of animal and you put them together with the eggs of another and you smash them together and you get a baby that's fine. How does that work? It's a big question. It's been a problem in science for a while. Because, like, bear in mind, when you talk about hybrid animals, some people are under the impression they happen only rarely or only in a laboratory setting, or that they are, like, always infertile, or that they're always sort of weak and, like, frail. None of which is true. They happen in the wild all the time, in the lab, and they happen maybe even with greater intensity than we can do in the lab, right? Like, they can put a gene or two from a fruit fly in a mouse, but they can't make a mouse fly or anything,
right?
Not yet. No disrespect to geneticists, but I won't be impressed till you make a mouse fly. But they can't like take animal A and put it together with animal B and make like a new animal. You know what I mean? Hello?
Sucker system. Sucker system.
I'm recording again. All right, so there'll be a pause in the recording. Here's the thing. I hate Windows so much. I hate Apple too. I was going along fine, and then it was like, "Hey, you need to install some updates."
Are you serious? That's what wrecked our show?
And I was like, "No, I don't want to install some updates." And it was like, "Are you sure?" And then like all my windows like froze up, and that.
Sounds like something Bill Gates would do.
Listen to me. I use OS 9 on my Apple. The reason I don't use that to record is because the operating system is so out of date. Everything that Smokestack wanted to use would not work. So I got this other computer.
Yeah.
Because for the past 7 years on my Apple, or maybe 8, when it says updates are ready, I have clicked remind me later, remind me tomorrow.
I do the same thing.
Every day for like 8 years on everything. Because anytime you update anything, it's worse. Computers are so unusable now.
It's true. Yeah.
They're so... I forget who said this. It was someone online. I'd give credit if I could, but they said having UI developers on staff is like having a standing army in peacetime. Because they just can't... to justify their job, they have to constantly mess with stuff.
Yep.
And it's like, it was fine. It didn't need rounded corners. Windows has been the same since 95. There are windows with things in them.
Yeah.
What else is there to do?
Stop messing with it. Yeah.
Go home. Make it faster. That's all anyone wants, is to make the same thing faster. Like Henry Ford said, if he'd asked consumers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. And he should have given them that.
Yeah, he should have.
Suck.
Yep.
He should have given us a faster. Don't give me this digital auto crap. I want a fast horse. Do I have more background noise now? I feel like I have more background noise.
I don't hear anything. You sound pretty good.
Good. Okay. Where was I? Right. Anyway, it's weird that hybrids are possible at all. That's a problem. Yada bada 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 bada. Okay. And because when you take two animals and you breed them together that are two different ones, they come out basically like a weird blend of the two parents. Like the genes just were like, hey, I'll be a little bit of head, you be a little bit of tail. I'll take the feet, you take the torso. Right? Which is weird how they can do that. It makes a little more sense Harkening back to an older show, if we're under a morphogenetic field theory,
Yep.
a little bit more intuitive,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But take, for instance, a liger. Ligers are the largest cat on Earth. Huge. Ligers get over 1,000 pounds.
Oh man, that's huge.
Lions and tigers, the adult male of either gets to about 500. Liger's about twice as big. And it looks like a lion and tiger that you threw in a blender. It has the head of a tiger, more or less, but the body and skin of a lion with faded stripes. The tigon, on the other side, is smaller than either of its parents and also has reverse body parts. Head of a lion, complete with mane, and usually a more tiger-esque body. Again, with faded stripes. Strangely having the lion's tail. And if you're wondering what the difference is, in animal, this is very patriarchal. You take the male parent species first. So a liger is a male lion and a female tiger.
Mm-hmm.
A tigon is a male tiger and a female lion. Now this reeks of gender conformity and all manner of things. But sadly, the lions have not caught up yet with gender theory. I am working on it. And one day they will. But behaviorally, ligers tend to act like lions. In that ligers also seem to want to be pack cats. You know, lions are peculiar for being the only pack cat.
Uh-huh.
Most cats are solitary. Lions have packs. They have like a harem with an alpha male. Sometimes another male hangs around. Ligers seem to like the same socialization, but also be a little bit more solitary. Like they're social, but not super social. You know, they're like hipsters.
Yeah.
Hipsters. And they're not physically feeble. As I said, they're huge, and they can live into their 20s, which is a good, lengthy cat life. And that's a good old age for a cat. So this idea that hybrids are necessarily sickly or going to be messed up, not true in any way. Right? What else can you make in the wild, or sometimes in a lab setting? But in the wild, you can make gold canaries, or can fishes, which is a canary and a finch. You can make mules, as stated, female horse, male donkeys, all the zebroids, zedonks, zonkies, horses, zonies. Ponies and horses are different. A lot of people think ponies are another word for baby horse. Different. It's a different thing. A baby horse is called a colt or a foal, right? Ponies are a different breed, and you can make a zony. You can have a cow, which is a cow and a yak. You've got your geeps, love geeps, goats and sheeps, also your shoats, right? You've got all kinds of cat hybrids. You've got the Congolese spotted lion, which is actually a tri-breed, if that's a word. It is it's a Lai Jagulep.
What?
It's a Lai Jagulep. This is an existing thing. It's
So-
you take a jaguar crossed with a leopard, and then you mate that with a lion.
Wow.
A Lai Jagulep. And that one's only been bred in captivity for obvious reasons, because those three cats live in different places. But they exist. It's possible. You can have a tri-breed. You can have the Serengeti, which is a cross between a Bengal and an Oriental Shorthair. You can have growler bears and Pisleys, which is it's a white bear with a brown bear, growler bear, or a Pisley, polar bear, grizzly bear, which is the bear mulattoes, right? You've got wholphins, which is a killer whale like Shamu plus a dolphin. That's
a real thing. They do that.
These are all real. Yeah, these are all real existing
Whoa.
ones that occur in nature. You've got beefaloes, which are buffaloes and cows.
Mm-hmm.
One of my personal favorites is the narluga, which is a narwhal and a beluga whale.
Do they have a horn?
Let me tell you about the narluga. The narluga is very interesting, actually, because this one's never actually been seen alive. It was discovered in 1990 when the scientist named Mads Heide Jorgensen he was in Iceland doing research, and he came into an Inuit's tool shed, and he saw strange looking whale skull hanging on the wall, and he asked the Icelander about it, or the Greenlander about it, and he said, yeah, I kept that because it was funny looking. I killed this 2 years back for meat, and 2 others like it. He said they had gray skin, beluga-like flippers, and but narwhal-like tails. And this was weird. Common theme of hybrids is you get, fits the common theme where you get pieces all smooshed together. Because you might think you get like a uniform blend, but no, it's just like in the old stories. Like a sphinx is like head of an eagle, body of a lion.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, the weirdest thing about this skull that threw Jorgensen was the teeth, right? So, well, I'll give you the punchline. They genetically tested it later and found that yes, it was half narwhal, half beluga. But he was like, that might be just a deformity. But he looked at it and he said, this thing had these belugas have lots of teeth, right? They have some of them sharp. Mm-hmm. Narwhals have no teeth, except technically the horn on their head is a tooth.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. But narwhals feed by suction. They just slurp up little food bits, like krill and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
The mystery skull had about half as many teeth as the beluga, but here's the thing: all of the teeth were spirals.
Oh, freaky!
I know, just like the narwhal's tusk.
Yeah, man.
So when it was putting together these genes or these morphogenetic fields, it was like the beluga part was like, I need some teeth, and the narwhal was like, well, I only got this spiral thing.
Yeah.
Here you go. Put them where you want it, and it just put in like half.
Whoa!
Spiral teeth. So they've never found one of these alive, but they found the bones, and this Inuit said that he had 2 others that he'd killed. And they did some analysis of what the composition of the skull, and it had carbon signatures of creatures that are on the bottom of the sea, which is different than narwhals and belugas feed on top creatures.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe this thing had a weird mouth and it couldn't do its parent feeding thing. And so it was forced to find a different niche.
Okay.
Right? And it was feeding off things on the floor. Very interesting. Right? So this same scientist went on to say, he was a bit like our beloved Gene Doctor who we're discussing today. He discovered these hybrids, and he was like, that's weird. I wonder how many other hybrid sort of whales are in the ocean. And he went on a study. It was completed in 2016, and he found over 20 different naturally occurring couplings of different species of whales and dolphins. Dolphins seeming particularly open-minded, really. Dolphins apparently will mate with about anything.
Timothy Leary, didn't he mate with some dolphins? Right?
Yeah. Even blue whales made hybrids with fin whales.
Ooh, weird.
Which is wild because
that's a giant size difference.
I know.
Yeah, man.
It's a big problem. But in fact, only 4 of the hybrids they discovered were from so-called sister species, or closely related, and only 2 even belonged to the same genus. So hybridization can occur over you're not even beyond because you've got your classification system, you got genus, species. Mm-hmm. So you can go even up to the order level.
Wow.
Which is very high.
Yeah.
Right? That's a very high degree. Because zebra and horse, different species, but same genus. Right? And it's sort of like, that's sort of accepted. Like, okay, if you're in the same genus, maybe it's possible. But when you go beyond that, it starts to get really hairy. But they found no, that can sort of happen. And if you look throughout history, some animals that we consider not hybrids now have been just taken as for granted as being a hybrid. Mm-hmm. I think some of these maybe should be revisited, like the hyena.
Yeah.
The hyena actually was taken so much to be a hybrid of a cat and a dog that Sir Walter Raleigh excluded them from Noah's Ark in his History of the World because he thought God only saved natural animals. The hyena was born of an unnatural union. Which, if you look at a hyena, they're absurd.
They're freaky animals, yeah.
They're freaky animals. I posted a picture of one, and I was like, hyenas are unnatural. I see maybe it's true. Maybe we need to go back and revisit that because they sort of look and act like half dog, half cat. They're hideous looking. Mm-hmm. They have like head and tail of dog, but body, and they move like a cat, and they have like spots like a jaguar. There are in fact 4 species of hyena, which themselves, of course, can interbreed: spotted, striped, brown, and aardwolf. And ironically, the aardwolf is the one that looks most like a cat. But right now, of course, the official line is they're more closely related to weasels, which I do not buy.
Weasels?
This is they say they're more closely related to weasels than dogs and cats. I'm like, no.
It's just grasping
this is
at
like
straws.
when you briefly tried to tell me that pandas were actually raccoons.
Yeah.
Remember when they did that?
No, that happened.
Well, you know, I'm a hobbyist naturalist. So
How embarrassing for science.
Well, yeah, and they were like, it's really a raccoon. But let me tell you, here's the thing about science. Brief aside. When I was in graduate school, I used to get by being a researcher. Like I would work in the lab, and they would pay me a stipend and like my tuition. Not a bad gig. Here's the thing I learned during that. Nothing about what I was doing. I don't even remember what it was really. Because it wasn't anything. There was an old man, who I will not name, of course. Even though he's probably dead now. He was quite old. And all he did was he would basically scam the government by writing up an abstract proposal for something that was impossible. And then he would get money from it, and then he'd give it to me and say, do this. And I said, what is this? What is this? What do these words mean? And he would go, and he'd give me a book. And the book didn't explain what it was. So then I had a computer, and I would do like ray tracing. What this was for, no one ever knew. I didn't know, but I worked at it. I still have the file somewhere, I bet. I used a program called Geant 4, Geant, it's a French thing, and MCMP 5, which is Monte Carlo Particle Transmission Simulator 5. And all I remember from that was doing ray tracing, and I would write a program, and then it would push go, and the computer would just flash in big letters, bad trouble, and turn off. Bad trouble. And that was research. That's science. It's like, is this going to work? Science. Bad trouble.
That's a t-shirt. New t-shirt. Bad trouble t-shirt.
Yeah. It was like that. Did you ever watch Homestar Runner?
Yeah.
It was like when Strong Bad had his emails and he got a virus and it just said computer over. It was like that. It's like computer over.
No, you need to make an effort to reproduce the bad trouble thing so that we can put that on a shirt.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just text that say bad trouble, and then your computer would.
Well, okay.
Bad trouble.
Like enhance your memory and dress it up a little bit so it's graphically interesting.
Okay. Well, if it helps, I had a very blocky digital representation of a human being.
Okay.
That I was trying to ostensibly track which organs would get radiation from various sources. Okay.
Well, send me a mock-up.
Okay. I'll send you a mock-up. This is bad trouble. One of the guys I worked with on that project is now working at Los Alamos National Labs doing the same thing he did back then, I assume, which was playing Warcraft 3.
Of course he is.
Which is what we did in the lab. Did in the lab. Anyway, probably the same thing, and that's science. And so I assume there was a similar thing going on, and some old guy was just like, "Hey, what if we just tell them we think pandas are raccoons? You think they'll give us money?" And I'm like, "Sure." So that's what I think about the hyenas being weasels. Anywho, okay. Wild discussion of hybrids, because those are all the hybrids that we know about. They're verifiable. And in some cases, you can go make them yourself. If you go get a pony and a zebra and you have some land, put them together for a while, see what happens. That can happen. Mm-hmm. And so what Dr. Gene was interested in after he did all of his research and he cut his teeth in hybrid birds, he said, how far can this go? How far can we push this hybridization if we did some really messed up stuff? What if we just did some weird stuff, man? What kind of creatures could we make?
For science.
I need this raccoon to mount that marmoset for science. Basically what he said. It's basically what he did. That's how he... And now, so he's compiled a great deal of research. He's written some books about this. It's very interesting. I don't know how much of it is true. He seems on his website you can go to. I said macroevolution.net. He seems a little too willing to believe in the possibility of a hybrid just because there's a photo of something that looks like one floating around on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I said, I think he went down the hole too far. It's
Sure.
fallen off. For example, cabots. He has a whole section devoted to cabots, which are cat rabbits, which would be a fantastic pet. If you could cross a cat and a rabbit, every 12-year-old girl in the world.
Oh, man.
I mean, it would be a bazillion-dollar industry.
Moneymaker right there.
And so on his website, he has tons of links and photos and videos of alleged cabots, most of which for some reason come from Latin America. And to his credit on all of this, he says this is just something to look at. It's not verified. So he's not totally out to much. But these to me, they look like cats with a specific kind of spinal deformity.
Okay.
That's made their back hunch a little too much like a rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
And they sort of have to, but they do move in a very rabbit-like way. They sort of hop with their back legs.
Do they have floppy ears?
No, that would be a big sell, but no, they don't. Sometimes they have a little floofy tail.
Oh,
but that could just be how the owner, sometimes they bob the tails.
Sure.
To me, they're not convincing videos, but they are sort of interesting in how they move. And you're like, oh, I mean, I guess take some blood and put it in the lab and see what could it hurt, right?
Sure.
Maybe there's cabots.
Go for it.
Why not? So that's what it looks like to me. But again, reflexively, you think though cabot's impossible. But consider all the verifiable hybrids we already just talked about. When you consider an Arlugo with spiral teeth, is a cabot really so outside the realm?
Not really.
A possibility, right? Other hybrids that Dr. McCarthy investigates on his website includes things such as dog foxes, which seem quite plausible, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Though we really don't have any good examples of some. There have been some. There's a stuffed dachshund in a museum in Chester in the UK. And it looks like, a dog crossed with a fox. And the story goes, the owners saw the mating happen. Said a male fox mated with a female fox on a canal boat near Beeston, which is a very British thing to happen.
Wait, a male that
fox
sounded like
mated with a dog.
Okay, gotcha.
On a canal boat.
Okay.
But there's been testimony of various doctors and biologists and naturalists throughout time talking about the rare but occasionally occurring dog breeding with a fox. Mm-hmm. That's not so unbelievable. In fact, there was a German source in 1868 who said the fox, which was otherwise very tame, became fierce when the bitch, which was in heat, was placed in his cage, and to calm him somewhat, the dog was chained in his corner. Gradually, the fox seemed to get used to his new companion and approached her ever more closely until after 3 hours, mating began. The bitch was thereafter kept strictly away from the other dogs and produced a litter of 4 young ones, one of which was dead at birth. The others died in the next few days. They were similar in color to the dark gray of the mother. So, fits the bill that hybrids don't always work so well.
Right.
It's a believable story. I could believe foxes and dogs could go together.
Right, and the idea that the hybrids, if they're just like a little less fertile or a little less apt to survive, it explains why they're rare.
Precisely. And so his main theory, just to cut to it, is called stabilization theory, and he posits this as an alternative to natural selection that doesn't totally take it out of the equation, but it's just like he basically says that it is rare, but he believes that in some cases hybrids can produce through continual mating a stabilized gene pool that can self-reproduce into a new species.
Oh, okay.
Okay, which is not so crazy because he points out when he's defending his thing, he says, at least my theory you can actually make new animals with. Mm-hmm. He said they can't make any new animals with their theory, but I can make new animals right now. And isn't that required for explaining the existence of new species? Mm-hmm. So that's a point to him in my book. Other things he goes with are like there's a dog cow, which is not believable. I mean, he has a weird, deformed cow that has a dog-like face, but I'm not buying that it's a cow, even though there have been, various people testing throughout history. What you don't know is that before Darwin came up with his theory of evolution, people were trying to figure out how new species came about, and the going was hybridization theory. They don't teach you this in school. Even Carlos Linnaeus, I can't say his name because he's a French guy, but he was the guy that came up with the modern classification system, of like kingdom and phylum and all that.
Yep.
And he said he came to the same conclusions Dr. McCarthy has by considering, in his case, plant hybrids. He wrote in a letter to a Swiss colleague, he said, "This new plant propagates itself by its own seed and is therefore a new species, not existing from the beginning of the world. It is a new genus, never in being until now. It is a mule in the vegetable kingdom." Speaking of the plant he had found. He then went on to propose, this is the founder of the classification system, that all the various plants and animals alive today were hybrids and the result of hybridization going back to some small set of species that had existed in the beginning. This earned him a steady rebuke from the clergy, and he kept silent for a while before taking it up in later work. But the thing to know is that this was a big problem. This was a big problem, and actually, for people that are creationists, Darwin was trying to help. People don't get this. This is why I say history is not what you think it is. Everyone you think is on one side is actually on the other, and vice versa. Because hybridization theory was an attack on an Aristotelian view of the world, which had its roots in a more conservative traditional worldview of this idea of the immutability of species, like the creator made X and X has existed from the foundation of the world, right? But they were saying no, X can make with Y and then they make Z, and this was a big issue for people. This was a big theological problem, which it doesn't strike us as one right now, but this was like destroying Christian Europe.
Like that doesn't, if that were true, that wouldn't bother me at all.
I know, but that's because we've largely gotten away from thinking in Aristotelian thoughts and thinking of it as necessary.
Okay.
I think Chungus would argue rightly that this is an error, because even the word species is a theological term. It comes up in Catholic dogma all over the place, the species of the transubstantiation, the wine and the blood and the flesh. Even the word species is like a Aristotelian. This is why it's so hard for moderns to pin down. And it was defended originally in terms of essence, in terms of this Platonic idea of the essences.
Yeah, sure.
Which is why it's hard to defend now, because if you don't have essence philosophy, then it's I don't know.
Yeah, all our categories are different now. We can't even discuss those ideas.
We're using the same. There's a big mess in biology that Eugene rightly points out, McCarthy points out, and Darwin actually saw himself as a defender of the integrity of kinds, like the biblical word for species, let each reproduce after its own kind. Mm-hmm. Because though he said that they did change over time, he was nonetheless keeping intact the idea that the species were siloed off from one another.
Yeah.
And therefore, though God made X and X could change over time and maybe branch out over time, it was still, in some ways, it's had its Platonic roots. Right?
Yeah, they were all part of the same continuation of maybe mutation or whatever, but they were all on the same track together. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So Darwin actually saw himself as a conservative defender in this way.
That's weird.
Yes, he had to cast out the immutability thing, but he was sort of quasi saving it too, because yes, they changed a little bit over a long time, but they were not. There wasn't this hodgepodge of the intermingling of different forms. And I'll read you a little quote from a detractor of the hybridization theory named Joseph Kohlreuter at the time in the 1800s, or actually 1700s. He said, just as it is unlikely that two different kinds of animals living in natural freedom should ever produce a hybrid, so is it also improbable that a hybrid should arise amongst the most regular order nature has established in the kingdom of plants. Nature, which always, even amidst the greatest seeming confusion, orders all in the most beautiful manner, has precluded such disarray. Among the animals, she has prevented it, mainly by means of their natural instincts. Among the plants, where close proximity, wind, and insects all tend to produce unnatural mixing, will she no doubt have known how to counteract the disturbing effects of such forces by equally certain means. Probably it will be found that those means include natural instincts, just as in the case of animals. So you can hear in him the desire, like this really need for nature to be pristine.
Yeah.
And like orderly, because this is the era of the divine watchmaker. Like it's the deist sort of era, like God made everything perfectly rational. He's the God of the Enlightenment. Mm-hmm. Everything's perfectly rational, orderly, distinct. Everything is in its place. Every T is dotted. And then he just sort of, he's sort of the creator, then sort of backs off and just lets it run like a watch. But he made it like a watch. And
that's so
precise.
Funny to me.
I know, it's crazy to us. And our current problems will seem as weird to people 200 years from now.
It's like the idea that Darwinism is a conservative reaction to something that I don't even see as a problem.
I know, but that's how Darwin sort of saw himself. And if we were steeped, and I am not, I think Chungus would probably get this a little better, or maybe we should ask him to come on the show and talk about this. Is that because he's a deep Aristotelian?
Okay.
Is that if you were steeped in this, you would see how much of a problem this, because like I said, it's even hard to define species if you don't have this essence idea.
Right.
And how can the essences, it goes back to this whole thing, right? Hybridization theory was so popular that even Mendel, the guy who came up with evolution along with Darwin, did research into it and argued that plant species we know today are the children of crossings of older, more primordial forms.
Yeah. I mean, you can look at art from early Renaissance and before, and all the plants look weirdly different.
Yeah.
I mean, that's you can derive that just from looking at art. Like the plants have changed.
Yeah.
In big ways.
In big ways. But see, then but when you admit this to someone who had this Aristotelian view, or someone that just took let each reproduce after its own kind, this was a problem.
Yeah. And
people were very upset about it. And it was causing lots of issues. And Darwin sort of saw himself as a preserver. And he did, in a way, because as McCarthy points out in his book, this view that species are siloed and don't intermingle is still sort of the dominant view that we have. Like a reindeer cow could never happen.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But McCarthy points out that there's a lot of historical people saying that it did happen once or twice now and again. And there's people claiming now with photo and video evidence of questionable veracity, granted, that it's still happening. But isn't it worth maybe looking into? Because if Narlugas can be possible, we've seen in the sea world that beyond the order of genus, you can have hybrids.
Yep.
How far can you push that? Especially, how far could you push it if you gave it a little laboratory help?
Mm-hmm.
Give it a little bit of a push. How far can you push it? Okay, so that's all nice. Gives you a new view on Darwin. There's a very interesting one on this guy's website about a dog bear, that's the most believable photos to me, because that one looks just like a dog or the bear. And I don't know, I'm not claiming it is, but that's the most believable photo on that website. Like, that looks like a dog bear, which was found in 2018 in Russia. I don't know that it is. It could just be a bear-looking dog, but if there was anything there. But like I said, we know that inter-order pairings are possible. Now, they're much less likely than intergenous pairings, but humans plus other mammal would, by the way, be an inter-order crossing. So, is there any truth to the ancient tales of satyrs, minotaurs, centaurs, and so on? which would be interorder breeding, right? Like I think the likelihood of inter-kingdom pairings is probably near zero.
Yeah.
Like marmosets probably can't breed with portobello mushrooms, right? I doubt.
Only one way to find out.
There's only one way to find for science. For science. And people have tried. There was a Russian Soviet guy who did some not good things with chimpanzees and women.
Oh no.
And it didn't work, supposedly. Maybe it did, and they just didn't tell anybody. Maybe that's who Putin comes from. Who knows? But why all this about potential? Because I made a somewhat provocative claim that some of our listeners have talked about. As I said on a previous show, you will live to see the rebirth of monsters. And I think that is true. I think you're already beginning to see it. Mm-hmm. Because it's an inevitability as things break down that it will happen. It's woven into the pattern, the fabric of reality. Because think about it. Every single fight in the culture today is about borders. Every one. Build a wall, don't build a wall. National sovereignty, no borders, no wall, no USA at all. Men and women are different. No, they aren't. There's no boundary between them. Cover your face. We should not be swapping air. We need a border between us. Open Canada so we're not racist. Close Canada so we don't get COVID. China has Taiwan. No, it doesn't. Crimea belongs to Ukraine. No, it doesn't. Gaza belongs to Palestine. No, it doesn't. My religion's the best. No, actually, all religions are one. There's no border between. Unity bumper sticker. Encoded in the very idea of diversity itself is this desire for the erosion of borders. All borders, right? This is why we have the furries.
Yeah. Yeah.
Furries, I'm telling you, I know they seem like little imps, but furries are the precursor to bestiality. Mm-hmm. And it's not even that hard to see. And then take that in combination with we have scientists trying to put human ears on mice.
Yep.
Making pluots, which are good. I mean, I like pluots.
What's a pluot?
A cross between a plum and an apricot.
Oh, yum.
Yeah, they're not bad. I like plums better, honestly, but they're better than apricots, in my opinion. Putting pig hearts in people. Recently, allegedly, if it's true, again, I don't believe things just because they're on the news, but making a human monkey embryo, if reports are true. All borders must come down at the end of the world. And I'm not saying it's the end of the world, big capital E, but the end of a world, because that's just what has to happen. So make no mistake, I think you will live to see the rebirth of like real monsters. Will they look like the centaurs and sphinxes of ancient drawings? Who knows? But they are coming. And frankly, if Eugene's website is to be believed, when he has pictures of human sheeps, a lot of that is just Sadar propaganda, like the six-pack abs and stuff, because those things look ugly as sin on his website. If those little deformed things that are not alive, that he claims are the stillborn pictures of humans mating, if that's real, they are not handsome. They are not riding around with their four legs and shooting bows and arrows and six-pack abs.
Yeah.
Let me say that. That's Seder propaganda all the way. So this has to happen. See, and this is why only someone that gets banned for Zorse posting can really tell you the truth. Because in the times of the upside down, it is only the jester who tells the truth. See, like, because I'm an internet insane person. I don't really think the earth moves. Thank goodness I don't have any sort of formal authority. Can you imagine if we had this show and I was like ordained or something?
That'd be
or like an elected official.
Yeah.
And people felt compelled by the weight of my authority to take me seriously. How disastrous. And yet, it is precisely for that reason that I can point to the emperor and say he has no clothes. I do not mind it, right? So, is it possible that centaurs, minotaurs, satyrs, and so existed in some form in the past? Maybe. Is it possible to see them in the future? Probably. Because the Baphomet is their ideal. It's the crossing. It's the you blur the lines between male and female. Check. Mm-hmm. Then you blur the lines between human and animal. Working on it. And then you blur the lines between, and ultimately is it blurring the lines between good and evil. And because Satan can't create, he can only mix up what has been created. And that's what he's going. And this is why the ancients were so into like separating things and like don't mix your two fabrics, because this has been a problem forever. And this is also why in the Christian story, like there's stories of like the saints encountering the satyrs and like converting them, because the mixing also has to happen to some degree. Like you can't, and there's a place for the mixing of things, and they have to. It all gets taken up together in the great crescendo of the eschaton. But it's still, when you're trying to blur things on that level, you're trying to deconstruct reality. And when we live in a world where Midwest Fur Fest is a thing, it's not hard to imagine that these goals are being marched towards, right? So I'm just getting out in front of people, so when they see someone come on the news and said, listen, we've made a centaur. It's a little ugly, by the way.
Yeah.
It not very good with a bow and arrow. But we made one.
Yeah.
And people will start worshiping it.
Probably. Yeah, probably.
Like the Hindus already do this anytime they think there's a monkey kid.
Yeah, if there's like a goat with 3 eyes, they worship it. Yeah.
Right. And people will do this because it is the incarnation of the blurring of the borders that they worship already. And what do you think maybe the abomination that causes desolation? And why is the Antichrist associated with the beast? And this is all. I'm don't be too stressed out. If we live in a world of centaurs, is what I'm trying to get you to see. It's going to be okay.
Maybe our centaurless world is kind of an anomaly.
Yeah, I think it is. Like I said, the end has to wrap around to the beginning. And the beginning is a world of very strange and mythic things. And you get to live in the crossing over. And that's going to be fun in a way. Listen, what would we do if there weren't the Illuminati trying to destroy the world? What would we talk about?
Good point.
They give us lots of show material.
We have a lot of laughs.
We do. And as long as you don't get caught up in their schemes, they're sort of funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be fine, guys. I'm just don't, if someone comes to your house and they say, listen, knock, knock, knock. Sir, we saw you didn't get the COVID vaccine. That's fine. But your genes are pure and not tainted with RNA manipulation. We would like for you to have sexual congress with this goat for the government. You will get a UBI check if you do. You should say no.
Say no.
That's all. This is the moral of this story.
Yeah.
Please say no. Say no to bestiality.
Mm-hmm.
Say no to bestiality. I think all of our listeners probably agree.
Sure, I think so.
It's more common than you want to believe. I don't.
Not among our audience. They're way
not
too
among our audience. No, but in the general population,
chaste.
People are messed up.
Yeah.
And I don't know. But anyway, so just be prepared. Help me in my crusade against Windows. Maybe donate to the nice list to help us out.
Yeah.
That'd be wonderful.
What's that called? The St. Nicholas Project?
It's the St. Nicholas Project. My patron saint, because it's like a little present I'm giving you.
That's cute.
It's like little presents I'm handing out. I always wanted to have like a thing where we delivered presents anonymously at night, but that seems like it's hard to do that at scale without.
Well, I asked, a while back, I asked the listeners to send us their addresses, and we didn't get a whole lot of them.
Probably wise.
Yeah, I mean,
Probably
we are sort of shady.
Who knows what we would send to their house?
Yeah.
What if we just mail ordered everyone Geeps?
There's a Geep. There's a Geep on the way, Chungus.
Here's your map certified Geep.